Many of us are familiar with the concept of trade-offs. In order to have one good thing, you must suffer something bad, or vice versa. Oftentimes in film, a disabled character is given a superpower, whether it is a literal superhuman ability or simply something they are supremely good at. These disabled characters are ascribed a skill or skills that may seem to compensate for their disability. In this analysis, I'm going to identify three categories of the disability superpower trope. First are films in which a character's disability and superpower are separate, though they may be related to each other. Films in this category are Blade Runner, Unbreakable, and Pacific Rim. Next, I'll take a look at films in which a character's superpower effectively negates their disability, including Avatar and Kingsman: The Secret Service. The final category I've identified is films in which a character's disability is their superpower, which includes the film Wreck-It Ralph. This is a complicated trope, and I don't mean to imply that each use of it is particularly good or bad. Rather, I hope to look at the ways the trope is used in different films, and how it carries different meanings and is treated differently in each one. So without further ado, let's get started. First, let's take a look at Ridley Scott's 1982 cult classic, Blade Runner. If you consider the shortened lifespan and imperfect empathy abilities of the replicants as a parallel to disability, the film fits amazingly well into the trope of disability superpowers. In this sci-fi film, set in the future dystopian LA, 4 genetically engineered replicants are on the run. These replicants look indistinguishable from humans, except for their disabilities and super abilities. Their disabilities include a shortened lifespan of only 4 years, as well as an inability to feel empathy, though this lack of empathy is called into question late in the movie when the replicant Roy, played by Rutger Hauer, saves Deckard, played by Harrison Ford. The concept of disability trade-offs comes into play with the replicants' superhuman abilities: extreme strength, intelligence, agility, and tolerance for pain. One major replicant character, Roy Batty, spends most of the film searching to cure his shortened lifespan. His creator Tyrell tells Roy it cannot be done, articulating the disability trade-off trope in his famous line,
"The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long, and you have burned so very, very brightly, Roy."
However, Roy is unwilling to accept this trade-off, and spends the rest of the film in a violent rampage, only calming down moments before his genetically programmed death. In this way, Blade Runner both fulfills and challenges the trope of disability superpowers. The replicants experience the trade-off of disability for superability, but they are less than willing to accept it. A particularly interesting example of a character with a disability superpower comes from the 2000 movie Unbreakable, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Samuel L. Jackson plays Elijah Price, otherwise known as Mr. Glass, a man with extremely breakable bones who is forced by his condition to spend much of his life avoiding physical danger and recovering from minor accidents which impact him severely. Elijah is a character whose superability, in this case his intellect, is separate from but still connected to his disability. Elijah Price is intriguing when considering the disability superpower trope, because his character is aware of this trope and is deliberately crafting his identity around it. In fact, the driving force behind this movie is Elijah trying to understand and create his identity as a disabled man. We learn through flashback that Elijah loved comic books as a child and an adult, and became obsessed with the dichotomy of the hero and villain, noticing that the hero is always the exact opposite of the villain. Elijah reasoned from these comics that if he were supremely breakable, as he describes himself, then he must have a counterpart who is unbreakable. Also following this reasoning, Elijah deduced that his unbreakable counterpart must be a hero, since physical ability is a classic hero trait, and because of his breakability, Elijah himself believes he has to play a villain. Elijah finds this unbreakable man in David Dunn, played by Bruce Willis. Elijah sought to discover David by placing himself in the supervillain role, engineering several huge accidents with mass casualties in order to discover an unbreakable person who could survive them. In this, Elijah demonstrates the extreme level of intellect and planning that is common to so many supervillains, which compensates for his disability by allowing him to be productive. Even though Elijah's character is a villain, though this is not revealed until the end of the film, the movie sets him up as sympathetic and gives a lot of importance to his struggle for identity. Take a look at the last scene of the film.
We know who you are. I know who I am. I'm not a mistake. It all makes sense. In a comic, you know how you can tell who the arch villain's going to be? He's the exact opposite of the hero. And most times they're friends like you and me. I should have known way back when. You know why, David? Because of the kids. They called me Mr. Glass.
The swelling music has both sad and hopeful notes, accounting for the mixed results of the conclusion of the film, in which atrocious crimes are revealed, yet Elijah is finally happy. The last shot of the film is a close shot of Elijah, indicating he is more important even than the main character, David. The two title cards that appear in this scene, indicating that David heroically saved the day and Elijah was institutionalized, are a satire of the overblown, purely good or evil characters in Elijah's comics. Overlaying the text on top of the characters, both of whom are experiencing complicated emotions and understandings of morality, shows how poorly these fictional identities fit actual people. The contrast is emphasized visually. Despite the text on screen indicating he is crazy, Elijah's expression doesn't look crazed at all, but is rather serene. This leads the audience to sympathize with Elijah for his need to adopt the villainous role in order to find peace with his identity. The movie therefore shows its viewers the difficulty of understanding one's identity as a physically disabled person, especially in a culture that glorifies physical ability. It also shows how influential and toxic negative portrayals of disability in the media can be, since Elijah literally becomes a supervillain because he identifies with disabled characters in comics, all of whom are villains. Moving into the more big-budget realm, we have Guillermo del Toro's 2013 movie Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim follows a team who uses giant robots called Jaegers, which are controlled by a pair of pilots, in order to fight the kaiju, a race of alien invaders that have been terrorizing Earth. Dr. Herman Gottlieb, played by Bern Gorman, is a mathematical genius. He was a designer of the technology for the Jaegers, and his mathematical models are integral in predicting the arrival of the kaiju and aiding the team fighting them. Herman also walks with a limp and uses a cane in most scenes. In Herman's character, we see the trade-off of a character's physical disability being compensated by his intellectual ability. To best analyze Herman's role as a physically disabled person, we have to look at the context of the film, which centers on the use of robots as assistive devices in fighting. Despite the action-packed nature of the movie, the plot's emphasis is not on physical prowess, but rather on emotional control and compatibility.
Remember, it's about compatibility. It's a dialogue, not a fight. But I'm not going to dial down my moves.
In order to pilot a Jaeger through technology controlled by brainwaves, two pilots have to be drift compatible, meaning they have to control their emotions and sync with each other enough to essentially share one mind while piloting. The entire Jaeger then acts as an assistive device, making the two pilots stronger and more able than they would be without it. The film therefore manages to be an action movie without focusing too much on the glorification of physical ability, and instead focusing on the mind and relationships. With that in mind, Herman Gottlieb's character demonstrates another iteration of this theme. On the outside, his disability may be most immediately apparent, but the film demonstrates that his intellectual ability and the growth of his relationship with his lab partner Newt, played by Charlie Day, are far more important than his physical ability. As a side note, I mentioned before that this review will only focus on physical disability in film. However, Pacific Rim focuses heavily on the character Mako Mori, played by Rinko Kikuchi, and how she handles post-traumatic stress disorder, including dealing with flashbacks and prejudice because of this disability. So I highly recommend checking out this movie as a study of the cinematic treatment of psychological disability as well. In James Cameron's 2009 movie Avatar, Sam Worthington stars as Jake Sully, a wheelchair-bound veteran who has lost the use of his legs. Jake travels to an alien planet where he is able to control a hybrid human-alien avatar with superhuman physical capabilities. Jake's character demonstrates what I've categorized as a disability erasing superpower. That is, a super ability that effectively removes all the apparent difficulties that would be caused by a disability. In this case, Jake's avatar body acts as an assistive device, allowing him to do physical activities he otherwise wouldn't be able to do because of his disability. When Jake is in the avatar body, he experiences no traces of his physical disability, and has highly advanced physical abilities. At the end of the film, Jake discards his disabled human body in favor of permanently living in the super-abled avatar body. The narrative of this movie seems to indicate that a person with a disability cannot be effective unless that disability is totally erased or compensated for. Next, let's take a look at the character Gazelle from Matthew Vaughn's 2014 film Kingsman: The Secret Service. Gazelle, played by Sofia Boutella, is a secondary antagonist and an action hero, and her most noticeable traits are her 2 prosthetic legs, which serve dual functions as both assistive devices that allow her to walk and dangerous weapons that she can wield with finesse. Like Jake in Avatar, Gazelle's character exhibits a disability-erasing superpower, that is, a super ability that effectively removes all of the apparent difficulties that would be caused by a disability. Even though Gazelle is missing her natural legs below the knee, we don't see any indication at all that her disability hinders her. Instead, Gazelle seems supremely agile, not only walking and running with ease during her regular activities, but also being a deadly fighter. This erasure of any negative affective disability makes it complicated to evaluate her portrayal, though I lean towards saying that it fails to fully acknowledge the disability experience. Gazelle's portrayal of disability might be more dynamic if her character demonstrated the hindrances of her disability alongside her super ability. Gazelle also dies at the end of the movie, which fits her neatly into the very frustrating kill or cure trope. Finally, the 2012 computer-animated movie Wreck-It Ralph stands alone in the category of films in which a character's disability and super ability are the same thing. In this movie, which follows characters who live within a video game, the character Vanellope, voiced by Sarah Silverman, has a glitch, a fictional condition that causes her to phase in and out of physical form. The glitch is reminiscent of a disability because it limits what Vanellope is able to do. It is coded further as a disability by the narrative, in which Vanellope is not allowed to participate in races and is teased and excluded by others because of her glitch. But in the final race, Vanellope realizes that her glitch allows her to move ahead of the other racers and to avoid obstacles. Her glitch, previously coded as a disability, now seems to be a superpower. Wreck-It Ralph also very deliberately avoids the kill or cure narrative, as, at the end of the movie, the game's code is fixed, and Vanellope is revealed to be a princess with a newfound power. However, she keeps her glitch, claiming that it is the best power as a racer. Rather than counterbalancing Vanellope's disability with a separate, enhanced ability, the narrative shows that her disability is a super ability in many ways. From the movies covered in this video, it's clear that the disability superpower trope can be utilized in many ways, some frustratingly reductive and some creative and complex. I hope you found this analysis interesting, and thanks for watching.